tell us what your reaction is to the scenes we're seeing, not just in Wellington. There are other fires burning on your patch, and the fact that a major incident has been declared by the London Fire Brigade.
Well, I've been in regular contact during the course of today with the London Fire Commissioner and the team at the London Fire Brigade, and I've just come off the phone with the London Fire Commissioner, Andy Rowe. The London Fire Brigade have declared a major incident because of the pressure on the London Fire Brigade. To give you an idea of the challenges we're facing in our capital city, on a normal day, the London Fire Brigade would receive between 300 and 350 calls for assistance. Today already, they've received more than 1,600 calls for assistance. Some of the fires you've seen during the course of today, these horrible images you're showing, some have required more than 35 engines, some have required 20 fire engines, some have required 15, some 10. The reason why we've called a major incident is we simply can't cope with the number of fires across our city directly attributable to the heat wave we're experiencing, the dry grass you've heard about, the way the fire spreads during the heat wave. The real challenge we have is some of these fires could have been prevented by us changing our behaviour. So the message from the Commissioner is quite simple. No barbecues, please, today or tomorrow. If you're out and about and you are a smoker, please be very, very careful how you deal with your extinguished cigarette. If there's glass or bottles near grass, they magnify the heat. They can lead to these grass fires and they spread so fast. And please, if you're near water and you're tempted to cool yourself down by jumping in the water, whether it's a Thames, a canal or a waterway, please don't, because it's really dangerous, not just the cold water shock, but it requires firefighters as well as others to try and rescue you. So it's a really difficult time. And we're asking for all Londoners, those across the country, to change your routines to make sure we don't cause a situation where the fire brigade can't cope.
So just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, you're calling for no barbecuing at all in London for the next day, even if this is in your back garden on a gas-fired barbecue on some concrete or something like that, and no wild swimming. You don't want to put any more potential pressure on the fire services.
Look, can I be quite clear about this? These are direct questions I asked to the London Fire Commissioner, and his advice is one I accept, and it is, please, no barbecues today or tomorrow. This is not about us being a nanny state or party poopers. It's the reality of accidents happening and fires starting and spreading rapidly. And these fires can spread rapidly in your garden, plants, decking, homes, and so forth. People have been having barbecues in parks. No, you can't have barbecues in the park, and definitely not on your balconies, even not in your private gardens today or tomorrow. These temperatures we're experiencing, approaching 40 degrees. The dry grass we are seeing is leading to the sorts of horrible images that we're seeing on Sky News now. So the message from me, from the London Fire Commissioner, is no barbecues today, please. Look, we all want to enjoy good weather. This weather is dangerous, though. The Chief Medical Officer himself said this weather poses a threat to life, and not just those who are older, not just those who are vulnerable. So it's dangerous directly being in this weather, but also it's a danger because you could inadvertently start a fire. And I appreciate the temptation of jumping in water when it's really, really hot, but I'm afraid not just the cold water shock, but also some of the tidal waves and some of the other challenges. A 14-year-old boy, his body was found today, who jumped in the water yesterday with his best friend. His best friend was rescued. This 14-year-old child lost his life. We want no more loss of life, but also we need the London Fire Brigade to be assisted by us by doing the right thing.
So just on that swimming, I mean, tragic as these terrible incidents are, Mr. Mayor, even if you've been wild swimming, as the phrase now is, you know the stretch of water, you know exactly what the conditions are. Just don't do it for the next few days.
Look, can I make this point? Look, accidents happen not deliberately, all right? People get into trouble when they're swimming, not intentionally. And the point is, at this stage, I can't hand on heart say there'll be a firefighter who'll be able to jump in and save you, or a lifeguard who'll be able to jump in and save you if you get into bother. And, you know, these tragedies we've had over the last few days, a 14-year-old child yesterday, a 16-year-old child 2-3 days ago, neither of them intended to have serious injury to themselves or losing their lives. And so I am asking people not to be tempted to have fun by a family barbecue in their back garden tonight or by jumping into water tonight. The London Fire Brigade do not call a major incident lightly. The number of incidents they're responding to is almost fivefold what they normally have to deal with. We've asked the fire service to cancel leave. They've cancelled leave. They've brought in staff. Those who were doing other things have stopped doing other things. All the engines that can be out are being out. But there's the difference between a 6-minute response and a 20-minute response is the difference potentially between life and death, and all your personal possessions being lost. So I am saying no barbecues tonight on the basis of the advice. I am saying don't jump into the River Thames or canals or waterways. It's really, really important. We do what we can to get through this heat wave without unnecessary deaths, without unnecessary damage to our properties, what is a direct consequence of climate change.
And given just how extensively resources are stretched, as you describe them there, Mr. Khan, should people be alarmed that, I suppose, how may I term it, the regular cover that they expect from the fire service is simply not there at the moment? They're too busy, they're too occupied with these wildfires that we're seeing.
Well, let me explain the scale of the challenge. So normally what happens is fire services rely on what's called mutual aid. And in the past, we've relied upon mutual aid. The flash floods this time last year, fire services outside London could help the fire brigade. All 10 of the fire services outside of London that would normally help London are themselves so stretched they can't afford to send anybody and are asking for help from London. That's how bad things are in the south of our country as a direct consequence of these heat waves. And the problem is, if you and I were speaking 10, 15 years ago, we'd be talking about heat waves happening every 10, 20 years. These heat waves are now happening every 1 or 2 years. And the temperatures we're now reaching of almost 40 degrees are temperatures we're not used to. And my concern also, according to the advice from the Met Office, it's possible the fires today, the excessive heat today could be followed over the next couple of days by extreme rainfall leading to flash flooding. And again, it's the fire service who will have no respite responding to this. So we need to do what we can to take some of the pressure off the fire service over the next 24 hours and do what we can to give them respite, but also to avoid the images you're showing of people's property being destroyed and people potentially being injured or even worse, losing their lives.
Just lastly, give us your overview, Mr. Mayor. This is a government, we know they're changing Prime Minister at the moment, that held COP26, just 9-10 months ago, yet now during the course of this leadership debate don't seem to be discussing the climate emergency at all. It's more about tax cuts.
What I find astonishing is that this Conservative leadership contest is taking place during the worst heat wave in terms of temperatures reaching that I've experienced in my lifetime. And all the experts agree, by the way, it's unarguable that this heat wave we're experiencing across Europe is a direct consequence of climate change. What those aspiring to be the Prime Minister should be doing is setting out their plans to address the symptoms, the adaptations, the resilience as a consequence of climate change, the fires you're seeing, flash flooding we may well seen, as well as dealing with the causes of climate change as well. Rather than kicking the can down the road when it comes to tackling climate change, we should be sprinting towards getting to net zero. And by the way, having sustainable forms of energy, wind and solar, means we're not reliant upon stuff from Russia or Qatar or Saudi. So it reduces the price of our bills, but also by retrofitting, adapting our homes, places of work, our public transport. It creates jobs in this country, jobs in West Yorkshire, in Ballymena, in Falkirk, making these buses, making the air cooling systems, fitting the electric vehicle charging points. And so it's a virtuous circle. And so it beggars belief to me that anybody who aspires to be the leader of our great country doesn't understand the crisis we face in terms of what's happening today in relation to the fires, excess deaths, but also the causes of this as well.
Just give us a sense then, from a Labour government's perspective, of the scale of that investment you described there, preparing for the future, getting to that carbon-free future as quickly as possible. We know it's going to take several decades at least. The scale of that investment, while also dealing with the here and now, trying to prevent the scenes that we're witnessing right here, right now, that we're discussing, that resilience, so to speak. Every single home in the country, every single city has to have major investment.
Well, look, one of the reasons people have large energy bills is because their homes could be poorly insulated. They haven't got double glazing. They're reliant upon fossil fuels, and there's a lack of security around fossil fuels. What we should be doing to reduce bills that people are worried about, ordinary families across the country, is to make their homes more energy efficient, insulate their homes, put double glazing in, make sure the supply comes from renewable sources of energy, which will create jobs. So tax revenues will come in from people who are working, who are underemployed, high-skilled, well-paid jobs. We can be exporting some of this innovation across the globe, but also reducing people's bills, addressing the cost of living crisis. And by the way, those who talk all the time about their concerns around these channel crossings, one of the ways to, reduce people leaving the global south coming to the global north is by addressing the issue of climate displacement, by tackling at root cause, climate change. That means less droughts, less, rising waters in countries like Bangladesh and so forth. And so I don't understand why anybody who, seeks high office doesn't appreciate that we should be dealing with the causes of climate change. And at the same time, the consequences, including investing in the fire service, invested in public transport, invested in homes, invested in solar and wind, supporting pensioners who are choosing between turning on a fan or eating, supporting pensioners in winter who will be choosing between heating and eating. Those parents who are choosing between skipping a meal themselves so they can feed their kids because of lack of security in relation to food and energy. These are big problems that actually, if we address them, can deal with the problems we're facing today: cost of living, energy prices, what you're seeing in your screens.
Mr. Mayor, a wide-ranging interview. Thank you very much indeed for granting it to us. Sadiq Khan there, the Mayor of London.